Noting the time at 7:30 and a quorum for the Finance Committee, I now call the Finance Committee to order. Is that it?
Yes.
Yes.
Note this meeting is being recorded on ActonTV. If anyone would like to make their own recording, you need to tell us now. All right, no one's doing that.
First item is public comments. I see Alyssa Nichols is on the mic, so recognizing you.
Thank you so much. Hi, folks. Alyssa Nichol. I'm a member of the Acton Select Board and a resident on School Street. Voters received their warrant in the mail today, and they are going to read, or have already read, that the Select Board unanimously recommends the DPW project and that the Finance Committee unanimously does not recommend. I predict a lot of folks will not know what to do with that divergence. The Finance Committee has expressed concern about the timing and the scope of the DPW project. I have grave concerns about waiting on or reducing this project. A past vote from Finance Committee recommended the design funding for this project. In Dean's preview video for the 2023 town meeting, he showed two slides. One depicted a renovation of the existing building for staff with an addition, and a new second building for vehicle storage. Because that plan required extensive and expensive structural upgrades, that alternative was rejected. The other slide that he showed was the preferred layout, which is remarkably similar to our current design. The most cost-effective way to remedy the many issues with the DPW facility was known at the time: build a replacement facility. This is the layout that the Finance Committee recommended designing. This is the layout that town meeting voters approved design funds for. 77% of voters voted yes. That project was further refined to address the current operation of the highway, trees and grounds, and engineering departments working at the facility. It was also value engineered to reduce the cost by about $9 million, responsive to your concerns and using some of your suggestions. In his preview video, Dean also showed a bar graph of facility sizes around New England that were based on comparable programming needs. Acton's originally proposed building at 47,000 square feet was right on target. It's been reduced by almost 5,000 square feet, again, to bring the cost down for taxpayers. The design team has also provided square footage costs of recently built projects in Massachusetts. The $700 per square foot cost of this project is in alignment with that of facilities built in the past 2 years. You've suggested that the Select Board is employing a logical fallacy, the sunk cost fallacy, to justify advancing the current design. To the contrary, the Select Board is proceeding with this excluded debt project on the ballot and borrowing authorization at town meeting, not because we've already spent design funds, but because it is the most critical municipal building need that we have right now. It is absolutely necessary to replace a 55-year-old building that does not meet current codes and regulations, and this is the right facility to meet the town's needs. One FinCom member even asked what the auxiliary plan is if voters don't approve this project, recognizing the critical need to provide an appropriate working space now for our DPW employees. A safe space, a right-sized space, a healthy space, an accessible space, a space that provides what they need to provide services for all of us. This is exactly the type of project that capital stabilization funds are meant for. Using the balance of those funds does not mean that this is our only priority. It also does not mean that we will be unable to address emergencies if necessary. We have a bottom line budget. Our staff aggressively pursue grant funding and are awarded a great many dollars. It is true that there is economic uncertainty right now. We cannot predict the impact from tariffs. We also cannot simply defer pursuing this infrastructure need. We will know the cost when bids come in. If the bids are higher than the borrowing amount authorized by town meeting, we will figure out how to proceed at that point in time. Yes, we narrowly passed an operating override last year, but we have not touched the untaxed levy capacity that was put in place. That money is still in taxpayers' pockets. The total spending increase for FY26 is lower than it has been recently, at 1.9%. The average single-family tax bill for the past 5 years has been about, tax bill increase for the past 5 years has been about $500 a year. Next year, it will be about $300. We have made the corrections you recommended in your point of view. You recommended no debt exclusion in the same year as an operating override. You recommended no new debt until the old debt was rolled off. That happened this year. We are following your recommendations. In the point of view, you do not recommend an operating override without structural change first. The town actively finds ways every year to meet service needs with existing revenue and resources. The school district is about to embark on a major restructuring exercise. In the point of view, you presented a vision of supporting education, but to not starve everything else. The DPW building walls are deteriorating. The load-bearing walls are buckling. The facility is not code compliant. We need to act now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Public comments?
Tara from Mass Ave in West Acton. I respect Alyssa's comments and appreciate the research and the persistence she has for the beliefs that she has. But when I was at town meeting and I saw that layout, I never imagined how much it was going to cost. That's the first thing. Burlington, which has an incredibly huge commercial base, brags that their $40 million building, DPW building, is state-of-the-art. Sudbury, on the other hand, is doing the roof for a couple $100,000 and heat pumps for they're doing a phased approach that costs them a couple $100,000 a year. The floors, adding an extension, all this stuff seems really reasonable to me. Foxborough, $14 million. Harvard, $10 million. People might say, oh, Harvard is such a small town, but when you do a DPW building, road miles is an important metrics. And they're 60 road miles, and we are 120-something road miles. So at 10 million, even if you doubled it, it'd still be 20 million. So I'm very leery about falling into that trap where, well, we've spent all this money, so therefore we should just spend more. You know, with the Hayward Light, same routine, where people go on and on and on, start doing all this stuff in design and spending all this money, never saying to anybody, hey, by the way, we already know this is going to be a $40 million project. I didn't hear any of that until recently. So I admire that FinCom and their diligence and their research to go and take a stance against this. I feel like we should not be aiming to do state-of-the-art like Burlington that has, you know, mega tax base, commercial tax base. I think something along the line of Sudbury would be much more reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other Dean?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Dean Charter, and although I am Vice Chair of the Select Board and Chair of the Department of Public Works Building Committee, my comments are my own, based on extensive study of the needs of the Department of Public Works and my many years of experience as a Massachusetts certified public procurement official and as a project manager in a number of large local projects, including the Town Hall, Memorial Library, and Public Safety Facility. Some concerns have been raised about the proposed Public Works Facility project, and many of those concerns have been around issues of financial uncertainty. I will comment on a few of these. The first point I would like to make is that although we are looking for approval at the ballot box and at town meeting in the next 2 weeks, we are a long way away from the bid opening. We are projecting that the project design will be further advanced over the summer, and a new estimate will be developed in August based on more refined plans and specifications. The project would go out to bid in the fall, and a bid opening in November, over 6 months from now. There will certainly be many changes, both positive and negative, in our economy between now and then. The August estimate will be an indication, but the real answer will be apparent at the bid opening. Either we will have enough money authorized and we will proceed, or we will not, and the project will have to be postponed or reconsidered. Once the bid is accepted and the bond finalized, the risk is absorbed by the contractor, and the town will be protected from price escalations. The second point I would like to make is regarding the potential impact of tariffs, specifically around steel and aluminum. If the contractor buys American-made or an international product, these numbers will vary. The 40% design estimate carried $4,800,000 for the prefabricated steel building portion of the building. This is a part of the $29,790,000 new construction cost estimate. This is a significant number, but is only one element of a building, and we are not sure if the contractor will opt for foreign or domestic, or what tariffs might be in effect at the time of bid. In either case, we will know the impact and can make the decision once we have a firm bid price. The third point I would like to make is regarding the general state of the economy at the bid date. If there is a recession, it is likely the contractors will be more aggressive with bidding to guarantee that they have a viable and fully funded project to work on until things improve. My understanding is that the Boardwalk campus bids were very favorable because the project was put out around COVID and the contractors wanted assured work. Finally, let's talk about the downside of delays. We know that construction costs escalate by about 5% a year. And a $38 million project gets to be almost $40 million if you delay by 18 months. In summary, I feel that there is no downside to approval of the project at the ballot box in a town meeting. If it is too costly, we will know that before we sign the contract. If it is the right price, we know that we have a better price for the same project than if we are delayed a year or two. The need for the project has been proven and acknowledged by the Select Board for nearly 4 years, and town meeting embraced the size, scope, and cost of the project by approving $1,225,000 in design funds at the 2023 annual town meeting by an overwhelming 77% by clicker vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have the whole select board presenting to us tonight, so one more.
Good evening.
Are you going next?
Fran Arsenault's currently the Select Board Chair and on Mohegan Road. As Acton prepares for town meeting, a critical decision looms regarding the future of our Department of Public Works building. A clear division has emerged between the Select Board, advocating for the construction of a new essential facility, and the Finance Committee, raising concerns about the associated financial implications. The Select Board strongly believes that the current DPW facilities are no longer adequate to meet the town's operational needs. These outdated and unsafe buildings hinder efficiency in crucial areas. A new facility promises significant improvements, including enhanced operational efficiency through a modern layout, a better workflow, a safer storage for expensive vital town equipment and materials, and more secure, safe working environment for DPW staff. Furthermore, the Select Board emphasizes the potential for long-term cost savings through energy-efficient design and reduced maintenance needs, benefits that align with the Finance Committee's commitment to fiscal responsibility. Addressing existing compliance issues and environmental concerns is another critical driver for this project. The Finance Committee's primary hesitation stems from the potential financial risks associated with the project, particularly concerning tariffs and the fluctuating cost of steel, factors largely outside of our town's control. While the project manager suggested that an economic downturn might offer some advantages, the Finance Committee remains wary of these uncertainties. However, it is important to consider that delaying a project of this nature will almost certainly lead to increased costs in the future due to natural escalation of construction expenses, a point that would seemingly resonate with the Finance Committee's fiscal prudence. Another concern raised by the Finance Committee involves the overall scope of the project. It is worth noting that the current design was developed based on cuts a Finance Committee member suggested, such as the phase design. Another cut that was made to meet FinCom was the reduction in square footage of the building, which unfortunately resulted in the loss of a crucial environmental component. As you may have heard, the projected tax increase for residents is an estimated $274 for an average single-family home and $160 for a condominium. And lastly, despite collaborative efforts in additional meetings, the Select Board and Finance Committee have been unable to reach a consensus. As town meeting approaches, voters will ultimately decide on the significant investment in our town's infrastructure. While the Finance Committee's focus on fiscal responsibility is understandable, it is concerning that this is translated into a dissenting stance against a vital municipal project that addresses critical safety, operational and environmental needs. And ideally, the Finance Committee would actively seek solutions to support essential town initiatives rather than campaigning against them. Thank you.
Do we respond at all? Or we just listen to public comments? Just listen? All right, fine. All right. David?
Thank you. I am not here to talk about the DPW building. Good evening. The sheet that I emailed all of you is a historical record in the general format of the ALG model. Basically, it produces the same statistics that the ALG model produces, but from a backwards point of view. It starts with the numbers at the end and works backwards. So it starts with the figures from town meeting. The percentages listed are computed from the actual numbers. They're not estimated by averaging the percentages themselves. If anybody needs a copy, I have copies up here.
Can I take a copy? I was home for 5 minutes when I saw your email. I just said thank you, and that was it. Thanks.
The FinCom, I wanted to say, basically, I had made this historical spreadsheet, and then I added the FY27 forecast column to this. I hadn't really intended this to be a forecast tool, but I added this to make some remarks. I also added a column at the very end called FinCom that just has a few percentages in it. The FinCom message in the town meeting warrant says that municipal growth rate for the past 5 years is 4.25%. You'll see in the FinCom column that the correct value is 3.1%, not 4.25. For the past 11 years, it's averaged to be 3.0%. Even if you include capital, the 11-year average is just 3.4%. Hopefully this can be corrected in FinCom's town meeting presentation. The FinCom message predicts a growth rate of 4.5% for the out years. The Select Board percentage of 5.2% in 2027, followed by 3.75% in the years further out, is 4.4%. So 4.4 versus 4.5. FinCom and the Select Board are very close here. Plus, either is well over the actual historic number of 3.1%, so both are very conservative. The FinCom message says that FY27 will likely not require an override. I agree with that. However, even using all the untaxed levy, it's still likely that it won't fit. Probably the way we'll make it work is the town will take some reductions, because the town almost always takes the reductions. The town made huge adjustments when the school enrollment was at its peak because we had to educate the kids at that time. The town made adjustments to accommodate double-digit increases in the Minuteman assessment. The town made adjustments to smooth out the impact of last year's override for taxpayers, and maybe the town will need to make accommodations next year to lessen the impact on the schools again. If the town does need to make accommodations to next year, it would mean that the real increase for the town would be less than 5.2%, which would lower any out-year forecast. I'd like to point out one more thing. That average of 4.4%, which the Select Board predicts for the out years, is 5.4% if you include capital. The 5.4% increase includes the jump up in debt service for the DPW building, which would be the largest capital project ever for the town. As you can see on this sheet, 5.4% is still a tenth less than the average increase with capital for the school district. And remember that each percentage point for the town is half the number of dollars than a percentage point for the schools. There are many problems with the assumptions in the discussion of capital in the FinCom message. The assumptions do not consider that the town is very aggressive with grant funding. In the past 6 years, we've gotten almost $20 million in grants. And that's not even considering ARPA or Kelly's Corner. The town manager says that he wants to purchase more capital rather than rely on debt, but still there must be some borrowing. Indeed, we must borrow for seven-figure items like a fire truck because there isn't enough capital spending in any single year to buy a fire truck. The message assumes capital is increasing linearly to go above $2 million a year, when in reality, capital spending goes up and down. Our highest capital spend ever was $1.6 million, and this year it's $1.4 million proposed, which is lower. I'm sure that everyone would think it would be great if we could invest more in critical projects, but spending more is not realistic every year. We have to be clever about making it all fit. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other select board members here? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just respond to that. I only received this at 5:50 and I didn't have time to go through it. The 4.5% came from an analysis of FY21 versus FY26, and it excluded all debt, not just excluded debt. And in those years, the inside 2.5, for lack of a better reason, declined from 2.8 million to 1.6, which accounts for why we have a higher number. We're not counting that in our number. It was not wrong, it's just a different basis.
Thank you for that clarification. Does anybody have the agenda for the Finance Committee? Sorry, I was flying, seat in my pants here. All right, so we're going to end the public participation and go to the Q3 financial update.
Hi there. As Ellie is setting up, thank you for having us back tonight. And this is quarterly 3, and it may seem like, oh my goodness, how did this happen so quickly? But thanks to the board, to you, you were patient with us as we had to reschedule Q2, which is a little bit later than normal. So we are back on schedule. So this is Q3. That we'll be presenting to you tonight. Sometimes also folks inquire about how do we look compared to last Q3, fiscal year 24 Q3. That's a great question. In summary, we are right on track, but if you actually want to look at particular numbers, figures, percentages, that those are listed on our website, that you can access all quarters from previous fiscal years. And if there's anything in particular that you have questions about certain lines, we'd be happy to answer those. And so, again, thank you, and I will hand it over to Ellie, and she can go into the details of where we are with expenses, revenues, and which also continue to include our enterprise and our revolving accounts.
Okay, good evening. Just as a reminder, as always, after the conclusion of this presentation, most likely tomorrow morning, this report and presentation will be uploaded to the budget section of the town website. I also just wanted to point out that a new addition to that area of the town website is our FY 2024 brief financial report, which was made public at the end of March following the publish of the 2024 audit. The goal of this report is to provide an overview of both the town and the town's finances in fiscal year 2024 in an approachable and manageable format for anyone, regardless of whether or not they have a financial or accounting background. So please feel free to check it out or share it with your communities. Moving on to revenues. From a tax perspective, we're exactly where we would expect to be at this point in the year through the end of March at 75.37% collected for property taxes. Net state aid is at 66.78%, and local receipts, we've seen quite a different picture from when we were here last. When we were here last, we were at just around 42% collected. So this jump is related to the billing and collection of motor vehicle excise tax, Commitment 1. So as a result, we're at about 92% collected for local receipts. Overall, we've collected $92,733,924, which comes to 76.10% of our revenue target. From an expense perspective, we're also right on track at 72.51% expended. We're also in the process of meeting with all of the department heads as part of our year-end preparation process. So we're reviewing budgets, creating a forecast through the end of the year, and reviewing purchase orders. Moving on to our enterprise funds. The Septage Enterprise Fund has seen quite strong collections this fiscal year. Part of this is related to the transition of septage revenue collection through OpenGov. So it's automated the process, created some efficiencies, and improved the collection rate. So that's promising for this year and future years. So from a revenue perspective, we're around 94% collected. From an expense perspective, we're at 43.57%. The transfer station is also seeing really strong collections this year. Spending is on track in relation to purchase services and supplies, but on the lower side, on the salary side, due to vacancies of personnel which are paid from this fund. There's also a $165,000 capital budget, which is mostly unspent at this point through the end of March. This capital budget funds contingencies for the operation should anything break down or anything come up. So from a revenue perspective, we're at 106.21% collected, and from an expense perspective, we're at 59.1% spent. Sewer is also where we would expect to be at this point in the year. This fund also contains a pretty significant degree of capital contingency. As of this point, most of this funding has yet to be expended, but we will continue to monitor it as we close out the fiscal year. So from a revenue perspective, we're at 85.66% collected, and from an expense perspective, we're at 66.40%. A little bit of a delay. A lot of a delay. There we go, ambulance. Revenues are perfectly on track with where we would expect to be at this point in the year. Mary Ann and I were just at the select board earlier this month seeking a 10% rate increase for this fund. to be in effect through the close of fiscal year 2026. That was approved unanimously by the Select Board. So we're at 78.81% collected. From an expense perspective, we've also had some salary savings in this fund due to vacancies. And there's a line within the budget for the purchase of a command vehicle. That expense is anticipated by the end of the fiscal year, but is not yet in the works, resulting in a little bit of a lower expense percentage. But at this point, through the end of March, we're at 55.43% spent. Transportation. Similar to ambulance, revenues are right on target for this point in the fiscal year. The expenses are looking a little bit high. The reason for this is that we receive a grant from Mass DOT to fund our transportation operations. The way that this works is the expenses flow through the enterprise fund. We submit to the state for reimbursement. We get the funds back. We move, in this case for this year, $100,000 worth of expenses out of this fund over to the grant. So we've received the funds. It's just at the time that this report was run, that transition hadn't happened yet. But it will look a little bit better when we close out the fiscal year. And then we have the commuter lot fund. In fiscal year 2025, the only expense coming out of this fund is the debt service for 19 and 21 Maple Street. As you can see, that has been paid in full. And then revenues are trending at the same pace that they did last year. Last year, we collected around $199,000. So at this rate, we expect to meet it, if not exceed it. Okay, moving on to the revolving funds. We have the fire alarm network. At this point, through the end of March, we've collected $3,700. This is not unexpected, as these invoices for this service go out in the April or May timeframe. So there it is, fire alarm. So we will expect to see a significant influx in revenue as we close out the fiscal year. And then expenses are at $21,417. Building inspector. Again, strong collections. We've collected $328,241, spent just over $161,000. As a reminder, this fund supports the annual cost of OpenGov, and we are planning to fund a fire prevention officer out of this fund in fiscal year 2026 if the budget is approved by town meeting. Sealer of weights and measures, much like fire alarm, revenues for this fund are collected in the spring timeframe. So we are expecting a significant uptick in the later months, but through the end of March, we've collected about $3,300 and spent $14,595. Food service inspection, strong revenues at $49,253. Expenses are at $37,174. This fund is on track. Hazardous materials. Through the end of March, we had collected just under $17,000, much like some of the other revolving funds. The bulk of this fund's revenue comes in the springtime. I took a look at it this morning, and it looks like as of today, we've collected $27,315. So that work bringing in those revenues is well underway. From an expense side, we've spent $20,643. Historic District Commission, revenues at $170, expenses at $138. This is on track. Stormwater inspections, we're at 48.81% collected, 43.06% spent. Just as a reminder, built into the FY26 budget, should it be approved, is a stormwater management program utility fee feasibility study, which would be for $100,000. Crosstown Connect, this fund collects monies from public partners towards the cost to operate the transportation dispatch center. Through the end of March, we've collected $29,281 and have not yet had any expenses. Roadway maintenance, collected $12,551, spent $10,549. This is typical as in past years. Public shade tree, no revenues, no expenses in fiscal year '25. Fire prevention revolving fund, our newest revolving fund, approved at last year's town meeting. Through the end of March, we've collected $22,300. No expenses have yet come out of this fund. And then finally, our recreation revolving fund collected $552,294. Again, a different picture from this time, or the last time we were here. That camp revenue is starting to come in. And then their expenses are at $464,000. And we'll continue to see expenses come out of this fund as the camp season commences. But this is typical for this fund at this time of the year. And that's all I have. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thanks, Ellie. Two questions. One is the transfer station. Why is the revenue way up? What's the driver there? The other one was on the commuter lot. How much is the bond that we pay every year? You know, what's the amount of money we're paying every year? And when is the bond paid off?
Regarding the transfer station, we noticed this last year as well. It seems to be a combination of things. One is upticks in the passes, the stickers for people to access the transfer station. Those have been trending upwards as they had in previous years. There's also been higher than expected revenues from scrap metal and other recyclables that people bring into the transfer station. So I think those are the two contributing factors.
Great.
And then regarding the commuter lot, I'd have to take a look at the debt schedule to tell you when that obligation has been paid off. But the debt service fluctuates around that $80,000 mark, but it is different from year to year.
Do we know what the revenue is coming in from, are we seeing an uptick in revenue coming in from day use of the lot or more commuters buying passes, yearly lot passes year over year because of more mandates to go back to the office?
I was actually by the commuter lot today around 3 o'clock. I can say it was quite full. Purchase of resident stickers, daily parkers has increased significantly coming out of COVID. And we are expecting to collect at least the same level of revenue that we did last year, which is around $199,000.
And also, Teresa O'Leary, the Collector Treasurer's Office, they look to see what is most advantageous for the residents, whether is it dailies, is that more in need right now, and it appears that it is, so moving some of the spaces to dailies versus monthly passes.
Thank you.
Ellie, could we go back to the general fund expense slide for a minute? Okay. So we've got 72.5% expended, but the footnote says Middlesex retirement and OPEB were made basically on the first day of the fiscal year, so that's around $6 million. So if you prorated that by quarter, we'd be even less expended than 72%. Are we running significantly under budget? Are we going to see a huge turnback?
So as I said, we are in the process of evaluating that, and I think it's too early to tell. We've met with about half of the departments that are trying to evaluate what the needs are through the end of the fiscal year. Do all the purchase orders that are open currently need to stay open? Can they be reduced? So it's kind of a work in progress. I wish I had more of a finite answer for you, but we're in the process of gathering that information and crunching those numbers. But the goal that we do have from John is to be at a 1% turn back. So that's what we're moving forward with.
I was just surprised that we're not 75% expended, given the fact that so much of the budget was paid on day one of the fiscal year.
To that point is that also, to add to Ellie, is that the vacancies, which we all know about, is that also contributes to the bottom line in savings. And the same note is that, like Ellie mentioned, is that working with every department, where are you right now on today? And what expenses do you have coming up? And unanticipated expenses, mostly like, okay, is there an emergency that came up? The HVAC system, so how do we pay for that? So the vacancies are pushing one way and knowing that we may have to budget for emergency situations as well. But to your point is that we do have still some vacancies.
Okay. Thank you, Ellie. And you too, Mary Ann.
Any other questions from anybody? No? Thank you for your presentation. It's very appreciative.
Thank you.
Nice job. So we're going to move on to warrant articles. All right. I don't have a list of, I took some notes off of Jason's email that he sent and a couple of the emails that were sent around right before the meeting. So I'm not sure which ones we still need to tackle other than what was identified in the emails. So I'm thinking we'll attack the emails first. And then if there's ones that we still need to address, we can go to those. Does that make sense? All right. Jason sent an email regarding Article 6, authorized to borrow for town capital equipment projects, 2/3 majority vote. His comment was a consent. I don't have his email up in front of me, but can I open that for discussion?
Apologies, Scott, I don't know what you're talking about. This is an article we have already voted on, correct?
I'm not sure. Have we? I missed I was not here for one of the meetings,
Yep.
and then the second meeting I was here. And then Jason sent an email out about Article 6.
Okay, I am feeling a little touchy, apparently.
Okay,
I'm not super interested in us arguing about a bunch of articles when the person who knows most about them is not here.
that makes sense. Yeah.
This is one that I am comfortable putting off until personally, right before town meeting, given that we have no idea what we're talking about. Do you have an analysis?
So it is possible, I think, to go through the articles and to see where the Finance Committee still needs to choose their position, so we can just flip through.
Okay.
And perhaps if we get to one where we say, you know, we don't feel comfortable discussing it or making a decision tonight, we just literally circle it and make a plan to discuss it.
I do know that the one that I did, where we were split 4-4, was listed here as unanimous finance approval.
So Scott, what I can do is, to help out, is I have the list that you folks voted on, the latest from the April 8th, combining with the votes that you took on March 25th FinCom meeting. So the Article 6, which is the borrowing for town capital equipment and projects, that, as of April 8th, that vote was deferred on the full article until further information was gathered and presented. And so that currently still shows as deferred.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
You're welcome.
And
While you're there, can you tell us what other ones we still have to deal with?
Yes, I will just quickly go down. Article 3, budget transfer, recommend due to possible transfer before town meeting, which is the norm. Article 6, we just spoke about, which was the borrowing for town capital equipment and projects. Article 11, approve home rule petition related to Acton Memorial Library, defer until able to read full legislation. Articles 14, 15, and 16, collective bargaining agreements with fire, patrol, and superiors, defer as we get closer to town meeting. Article 18, the commuter lot and station maintenance, defer to the next meeting. I think because the person who had that was not in attendance. I don't think it was for any other reason. Article 31, amend zoning bylaw, open space residential development, defer to the next meeting. Article 34, affirm home rule petition for checkout bag minimum charge, defer till next meeting. Articles 37, 38, and 39, the citizens' petitions for the Citizens Library, defer to next meeting. Again, that's 37, 38, and 39. And the last one is 40, which is also a citizens petition, and that's to hold a workshop regarding to the traffic light at Hayward and Main Street. Also defer to next meeting.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
Mr. Chair, if I may, town manager's informed me that we are making progress on the 3 collective bargaining agreements, and he expects to be able to announce something later this week. But as of tonight, we don't have any more information than we did before, so I would move that we continue to defer on those.
All right. Do we put this to like the whole committee to make an opinion, or do we just decide to defer? I say that, I agree with you, let's defer that. And, all right, so you want to just look at these as Allison suggested, and go to Article 3 and just look at it and then see what we want to do, how we want to handle it.
Generally, there is no budget transfer, and if we are informed of one pre-town meeting, we can vote on it then.
So you're saying that there normally is not a budget transfer?
Very seldom.
So this is just a placeholder?
Mhm.
All right. Are we, so we're just going to defer that to town meeting, and if there's a budget transfer, we'll vote on it at that time? Okay, so that's deferred. Jason had Article 6, which we already discussed, and you want to defer that to town meeting? Is that the consensus here?
Did Jason provide any information for us to do?
He sent an email, there was a paragraph on it.
I don't believe he sent it to everyone.
Yeah.
I do not have access to that email here, so I cannot read what he said, so that has to be deferred. All right. And I think it was it Alex that had Article 11 about the approved home rule petition for the Acton Memorial Library? Because he sent an email as well. Do you see that email, Christie?
It included his draft statement, which is not loading for me. I don't know if it's loading for others.
I have it loaded here, but I'm not, without having the actual discussion with him. He implies that we have reached consensus on something here that we have not discussed.
Right.
So I don't see how we can have this discussion without him to explain his thought.
All right, so let's defer Alex's items, which is Article 11 and Article 37, 38, 39. And I think he had 40. I might be mistaken.
That was Jason Cole.
And he's not here to discuss that either. Which article is it?
It's the Hayward, Maine, so it's whatever, 30 something.
It is not uncommon for us to not give opinions on citizens' petitions.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm just handing this out. It's, these mini roundabouts are cheaper, safer, and better for the environment, so said the Federal Highway Administration. And so this is just a 4 slide.
I think we know this. I prefer just to focus on the articles right now. I think we understand. If we have questions, we'll ask you. Thank you. Can I jump to the one that I did that Dave was not here to vote on, and we voted 4-4 on? It was the, I'm going to find it. I think it was 13, Article 13. And 11, 12, 15, 13. Article 13, which is the authorizing the town to be able to sell the parking lot, which is across from the church. Dave, when you were not here, we had a discussion, and I think to summarize, half of us did not like the idea of having disposal of parking spaces, and the other half were interested in seeing development of the area and thinking that the sale of that property might spur that. Christie, am I summarizing that? All right, so I don't know how we do this, but Dave was the only person that didn't vote. How does this work?
Technically, whoever made the motion, or if no motion passed? Okay, someone would have to make a motion and we'd have to revote.
Okay,
But it's not, since there was not a previously passed motion, we don't have to go through the
Okay.
rules of fixing it.
so Dave, I just probably want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, and this is incorrect, the 8-0?
Yes.
Okay. It was 4-4, okay. Yeah, so, years ago, we had there's like the South Acton Train Station Committee, and there was always a need for parking, and these were the overflow lots, et cetera. And one of my articles is the commuter rail lot. I'll just give you a couple numbers that the town manager had sent over. Is that as of last month, and I think Ellie was sort of hinting at this, but approximately 150 resident stickers have been sold so far in fiscal '25. There are currently 169 resident parking spaces. So, it is much more utilized year to year, to Roland's point. I mean, return to office, return to work, et cetera. We had talked about this, I think, in this meeting a couple times over the last couple of years. It's hard to, look 3 years ahead and say everybody's going to be back in the office, but immediately prior to the pandemic, there was a very significant need for train accessible parking in South Acton, and there was a serious shortage. And so the Jones Field, where the playground is, there's the new lots there. There was the buying of the gentleman's property there that's now being leased to the food pantry. I don't know the background on the 4-4-0 vote, but it makes sense. That's probably like the right outcome, is that, you think about like looking at this sort of property is developing it, and having something more, livable maybe, or just more for the town character there rather than a parking lot. Honestly, it's really hard for me to say, because people are going back to the office, and when we had committees, we had the new train station project and all the state money that went into it. I'm kind of hesitant on this as well. I'm not saying I'm pro or con, actually, I think I would abstain just because I know some of the folks involved in this sort of project. But it's hard to, and the lot's probably at 90% sticker being sold right now, and it's, the times that I've utilized it, it's not nearly where it was pre-pandemic, but it is definitely, every year that goes by, it is more utilized. And this lot, I mean, we had fantasized about, even having more property in South Acton along the school street line here, and then maybe a walkway down that would go below the tracks rather than crossing Main Street, Route 27 there. And so there's a lot of history, and I hate to be cautious about it, but it is like an evolving situation. So I'll just offer the background on it. I would probably abstain as it is. Sorry, it's misprinted here.
So I think we should probably just change the vote on it to, I guess let's take a vote. Don't take a vote?
We have 6 people here. We had 8 people last time.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
And we know Dave's going to abstain.
So
So it
it-
seems like it's even less represented.
So, but so we
We
should,
can vote it right before town meeting when we're all there.
all right, thank you. All right. Okay, so that's that one. Go back to the list. 13,
I could do 18 if we're not,
go ahead, Dave.
this is a relatively straightforward one. Commuter lot and station maintenance, page 37, 38 of the printed warrant. You can see the fund balance. For those of you who don't know, it's pretty self-explanatory. We charge a annual fee for residents. There's metered spots there, and then there's more spots available for folks to purchase on a longer-term basis. This generally has been a reasonably good revenue generator over the years. We bought that property there a couple of years back. That's now the food pantry, but it was leased to an ambulance operator prior, who I think paid little or no rent on it. So now we have the debt service of it, so you can see fiscal, Telly's point, fiscal 25 and 26, it's essentially 85,000 of debt service expense. This parking lot, the revenue from it also is used to subsidize the transportation fund, so you can see the $100,000 transfer there in that. But, to step through the fund balance left to right on the table, 335,000, June 2024, it sounds like, it looks like we're pretty close to being on budget, relatively close for 25. So likely we would end June 25 at 434, right around there. And then, as John pointed out, just some modest growth here from 25 to over 20, or 26 over 25, 190,000 versus 183,000 revenue. And then the expense, and then the subsidy for the transportation fund. So, this is revenue generating for the town. We've historically used it for the transportation subsidy, and then there's the debt service. And so there's also, it doesn't say here, but there's a $20,000 sort of usage of just town services for maintaining the lot, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty vanilla, just modest growth in the fund. So I make a motion that we recommend this.
Second.
All right, so we'll take a vote. Roland?
We don't need a roll call.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Could you just ask for any abstentions or nays?
Are there any abstentions or nays?
Thank you.
I'll get used to this eventually.
We can train you, don't worry.
For most votes, you would only need to do a roll call if someone is online. There are certain situations where you have to do a roll call, and I think we are told what those are ahead of time.
Thank you. All right. 1, 6, 5, 11, 13. I think we're on Article 31. Who has 31?
I do. It's the zoning article.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Does anyone have a strong feeling about not discussing it tonight and holding off? Because I think there's always more to say about this topic.
Well, typical, our pre-town meeting is about an hour, and we've got about 2 hours worth of stuff now. And this could be a lengthy discussion. So I guess I'd throw it back at you, Allison. Do you have a recommendation?
My recommendation personally is that we support the article, that we recommend the article. And part of the reason for that is a lot of the discussion earlier, throughout the year has been around the increasing taxes, not an increase in revenue, I guess, to cover our costs, right? Our costs are going up faster than our revenue. And in reviewing the fiscal impact analyses that have been done by other towns, and I sent you a handful that I found. I didn't want to send you just one or two because I didn't want to make assumptions, is Billerica really that similar to Acton, or is Manchester? I don't know. Having 10 to look at, you can, pick the ones that you think are most persuasive. But in virtually all of them, the fiscal impact is positive. The expected revenue that comes in from these types of zoning changes outweighs the potential cost of adding the additional units in the town. And that is seen across all of these different communities. The list is Ashburnham, Billerica, Harvard, Mansfield, Manchester, Medfield, Milton, West Newbury, and Weston. And virtually all of them saw a positive impact. So if I'm thinking, wow, our costs are going up faster than our revenues, is there a way to increase the revenue? Potentially it is to disincentivize the large single-family home and incentivize multiple units on a lot, which is what the proposed zoning bylaw change does. So again, just purely from a fiscal financial standpoint, if we wanted to do something that would incentivize building that increases revenue to the town while bringing in fewer school-age children per unit, or fewer costs per unit or lower cost per unit, this would potentially be a way to do it. So that's my 2 cents, yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. So are you willing to make a recommendation to?
Yeah, I recommend.
Recommend the article?
No, there are
you
no
willing to do
questions,
that?
there's no debate to be had?
You say that, I second, then we can have questions.
Okay,
Okay. So you say it first.
yeah. I move that we recommend Article 31.
Second.
Open for debate, discussion?
A comment, I think my first reading of this, I was okay until I got to the last thing about increasing affordable housing. I think we do need more smaller houses in this town. And as I read through the last part, what I saw was it was basically providing incentives as opposed to barriers. It was trying to get builders to be willing to use a given footprint to get in more small houses than fewer larger ones. So I kind of overcame my objections to the third piece of it, because I think to the extent we can use zoning to incentivize things that we think are good and not place restrictions on development, I think that's a good thing to do.
Just a clarification question. Alison, when you mentioned that financial benefits outweigh the financial costs, does the financial benefit refer to the property tax increase?
It's both the property taxes, it depends on which type of impact analysis you look at, but typically the formula is, let's see, net new tax receipts, and then other fees and revenues, so like excise tax, right? That's, some of the formulas do factor that in, the expected revenue from excise tax that's collected from new units.
So include all taxes, including the property tax and excise.
That they can forecast.
Sales tax.
Yeah, you really should read one to see how
Sure,
many
yeah.
caveats they have in them.
Sure. Does that, maybe one more question, is does that reflect the school size as well, including the per pupil state aid and also the per pupil cost?
It's an
Or is-
interesting question because I think the Manchester one and maybe a couple of the other ones looked at some of the aid that comes in from the state or the additional funds that potentially come in for like choice of school funding that would be lost, right? If you have an increase in
Exactly.
your local enrollment. And so they did look at it and they did have a negative impact for fewer developments. So as they added units, the impact was more positive, if that makes sense. So take a look at Manchester's if you're
Sure.
interested in,
All right.
yeah.
Thanks.
Also on that, Dr. Chen, it's, state aid is also by the number of students in your school system, right? Right now, we're on the decline, which means less state aid because you don't have as many students. We get affordable housing like that, multiple units can be built. Say each of the homes, each have 2 cars. Instead of putting up maybe 2 giant homes, you're putting up 8 units. There's 16 vehicles you get an excise tax on versus maybe the other one has 3 or 4. So it's maximum maybe 8. So it's just something that, it's not, I'm not saying that happens that way, but potentially, right? We do have, obviously, an issue in this town, as well as West End, Manchester by the Sea, and all these other ones that you did in the study, that the homes are expensive. Manchester and by the Sea and West End a heck of a lot more than Acton. But young people who are starting out, highly educated, great paying jobs, can't afford to buy a house. I have a friend whose 2 sons are in the same boat. And what they're paying for rents are high. And that all adds into it. And seniors who would be selling and cashing out of their house in Acton, if the house is really high, young families are not going to move in. It may sit in the market longer, not be worth as much, and they need that money to subsidize their retirement, especially if they're going to assisted living or something, which is, as I found out by putting my dad in recently, is very expensive. So that's, something to look at. We've built some things in the town in the past 5-10 years. You can look right across from Discovery Museum where they put those units in. Further down the road, yeah, there've been some units like that, but they've also built out Quail Ridge. And those houses are a heck of a lot more money than my house if you want to buy one. So there are, or further up in North Acton and Robbinsbrook, those single-family homes that are in there for seniors are a lot more money than my single-family home is. Plus, they have high ownership, high cost for HOA fees. So building smaller, affordable units on a lot, they did in Concord too with a small one, I think is a positive for the town. I think we should, and you have my support for the article.
Can I ask a quick question, and I'll go to you, Christie? When you're reading through all the details of this, and I apologize because I've not gone through it to the depth that I should have, if you live in a neighborhood and someone has a tiny ranch house, contractor buys it, can they rip that down and put 4 small units there?
Depends on the size of the lot.
What's the size limitation?
I don't remember exactly. You'd have to look at,
For the R2 district, it would be 20,000 square feet for the section 5.6, the 3,000 square foot one, and then the incentive goes to 25,000. So if you have a standard subdivision, it'd be 25,000 square feet required per housing unit. So if you had 100
Can you translate to acres for me, because my
Yeah,
math
okay,
isn't
sorry.
mathing
So
right
an
now.
acre is about
I
40.
can't do the 20,000 to
40,000
acres.
square feet, so basically you can have 2 per acre. So, and then the incentive allows you to build more per acre.
So the current situation is you can have 2 houses on an acre?
No, right now you can only, so right now it's 20,000 square feet per, so 2 for 1 acre.
right now, without any law
For
change.
standard subdivision.
For standard subdivision, you
You're
can have two houses.
you're proposing increasing that to 25 for a standard subdivision.
Okay.
But it would stay the same for the incentives, the HFA, the Habitat for All Millionaires, but, so it would stay the same for the cluster housing. The issue is that then you'd be able to stuff more in the uplands, which I doubt that any of these impact studies covered. I also I have a question for Allison, if it's okay. So these impact studies, the most important, one of the most important metrics are the number of kids per housing unit. So if you look at Lincoln or Manchester, it might be very low. So I'm going to ask you what it was and whether, so does it compare to Acton? So that's really important. I'm glad that somebody brought up the smaller houses because we have almost 400 units that are in that 450 range, according to the real estate agent from the planning board that voted against this. So I appreciate looking at the other impact studies to see what an impact study could do. I would be leery to assume that it has anything to do with Acton without running the numbers, especially the number of kids per school, because certain towns attract people because of the schools, and so that makes that particular metric all the more important for, And also, the Design Review Board looked at this upland problem where you get a lot of more units, a lot of the smaller units on the upland, and I believe they are recommending that you take out the inclusive part of it and just the allowed cluster for the 3,000 square feet. I don't really know because I haven't seen, anything written, but so you might want to defer it to at least look at the Design Review Board. That's a bunch of architects to see what they think. I also know that Jason probably has some things to say, so I urge you not to vote while he's not here. Anyway, thank you.
So the SAC, which is school-aged child, I think that's normally how it's abbreviated, the SAC ratio, it really depends on the impact study. In many cases, I think it's RKG is one of them. They will work with the town to decide on what that variable will be, and they keep it constant throughout their analysis. In others, like I think Weston was one of them, they did the analysis assuming an average ratio, and then they did one with a higher ratio, assuming, maybe there's a baby boom, or the units they build just happen to attract families. And in the second case, with a higher than average ratio, it did show a negative impact, but the negative impact was not millions of dollars. So I don't know what Acton's ratio is, maybe we could find out, but it also depends on the type of units you're building. So for a single-family home, many of these studies will use 1.5 as the average ratio, because many of these homes will have 2 kids, right? 2 or more kids, and so that drives the ratio up. Whereas in a 2-bedroom condo, it's like 0.3. So in a 2-bedroom condo, most families will not have a child, but maybe half of them will have 1 child. If you turn that into an apartment, not a condo, but an apartment, that ratio goes up. And so then it becomes very difficult. We don't know what the ratio is how many kids per household we're going to have, depending on, is it a condo, is it an apartment, and those factors matter, and we can't predict that. So I think a lot of the studies assume 0.6 or 0.7. That's what I saw often per unit. Again, taking into account that many units are 0.3, and then you've got the 1.5 for the single-family home. So it's like they meet in the middle at 0.7.
Yeah, I think last time Steve would know, he was around then, I think it was like 0.8. It was a 0.8 on average, something like that, for Acton. But again, this Acton has a lot of land that's near wetlands, so stuffing more units onto wetlands, on the upland portion of the wetlands. So for example, 22 Elm, if you look at that one, that was 6 units allowed by a standard subdivision, and it went to 12 could fit when you start to, push them all together as multifamily. So anyway, I urge you to wait and at least get what the Design Review Board said and hear what Jason has to say. Thank you.
Oh, I also wanted to add real quick something from the Mansfield study. So their total student enrollment steadily dropped since 2010. The public school system experienced a 28.3 decrease in enrollment between 2010 and 2021. And even under the strongest development scenario, it was likely that Mansfield would only gain about 15 to 27% of the net loss in students if the zoned area were fully developed and occupied. So their enrollment drop was so steep, and even with the building that they had during that drop in enrollment, they never made up the numbers. And so a lot of these studies have also looked at the historical drops in the number of students, but then the building that has happened in the meantime, and it's just the average family is not having the same number of kids as before. Anyway, it becomes very difficult to predict what the SAC ratio will look like in the next decade.
Thank you for doing that work. And were any of these towns potentially consolidating schools, or do they presume a fixed cost would continue forever effectively?
I didn't see that they got into that depth. They take their cost per student numbers from the Department of Education numbers that are published, right? They take their cost from that. They don't, I think, do any more math beyond
Got it,
that
thank you, because
reported
if you do
amount.
reduce the fixed costs, then you aren't interested in filling it up more. You're interested in lowering the costs. Thank you.
Go ahead, Christie.
The concern that has come up around this sort of project before, specifically with the MBTA zoning, is there isn't a study on natural resources like our water supply. And when I spoke to the water district about the MBTA zoning, they said that they had no predictions from what the building could be to be able to say whether our water supply could meet or at which point we would have to switch over potentially to the MWRA, which costs a ton of money. I'm not saying I have any answers, but this is a big unknown for us that we need to try to get a hold of going forward when more changes like this do happen.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Or this for the Finance Committee in general? Yeah, just 1 second. Do we know in the school budget what their assumption on enrollment was?
We do, but I don't know the number off the top of my head. It's in there.
I know there's a number in there, but like, do we have an idea if they, I'm assuming they put the enrollment as either flat or growing, not flat or declining, right?
I think it's declining
Roland?
slowly.
I believe it's declining.
It's been declining for years.
Yes.
Did they forecast it declining?
They had maybe had an outlying year or two that it ticks up a little bit, but overall trend is down.
So if this zoning change were to accomplish everything that it is dreamed to be, which is to make smaller houses, get people in the town, and then increase our enrollment, the budget for the school, which is already showing that it's running hotter than it's supposed to be, would not be sufficient to support the students in the town? That would be from this? Is that a correct assumption?
I lost you on that.
So like, the school budget that they
It's
have
based on X number of students.
is based on number of students that they projected out, and they're projecting it to be that they're going to have a maintenance budget, and they're going to be running hotter than they historically have been. And if we have more students coming into the town, which puts more students in the school system, that's going to be a higher number of enrollment versus what they are projecting, and they're already projecting a strained budget. So wouldn't that make their budget then worse?
Well, a couple of things. One, I think Greg at one point said the consultant the EDC hired projected a declining population of Acton. The school enrollment has been declining for years, but the total market for smaller houses is not necessarily families with kids. I know from my own experience, 10 years ago, looking to downsize in this town is a very daunting task. There are very few places where, once your kids are grown, you can move in this town if you want to stay. And I didn't particularly keep wanting to keep my 5-bedroom house when nobody had moved home in 5 years. So, yeah, I eventually bought a 3-bedroom condo, but they're hard to find. And so by contrast to, they're all going to fill up with kids, I would say there's some proportion of them will fill up with people who have lived in town for years, want to stay here, and have nowhere to go, but would love a smaller house.
I just want to recognize this gentleman over here, as he wanted to say something. And
So one other comment.
Yeah, go
You also
ahead.
have to, even though you change zoning, it doesn't mean that a developer's going to come in, buy up a chunk of property and start developing it tomorrow morning,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
It takes years. And I've seen a lot of, in this town, that were preserved land. You know, the most recent one over in Weatherby, Cowett, the farm that we did the thing on the farm a couple of years ago, Piper Lane, which they got a house when they bought the land. That took a while to get rid of that. And now School Street, et cetera. So a lot of open space has been preserved, too, which limits your growth potential. Tara's right, yeah, there's wetlands. But all your zoning is, it doesn't say, there's still a setback on wetlands that you have to maintain, period. That's DEP. That has nothing to do with the town. The DEP mandates that, and you have to follow that law. And you'll drive down Main Street, and you'll, down 127, yeah, Main Street further past, over the other side, past, going back through South Acton, and you'll see they're doing some development there, and there is DEP. They have to post their DEP number right there, which means they're backing on the wetlands, and it all has to be mitigated. And so that's something you have to consider. I mean, so it doesn't mean that you're going to change the zoning bylaw, and tomorrow morning they're going to start building. We adopted the zoning bylaw for the MBTA, a year ago, 2 years ago? I haven't seen any development that has anything to do with that, because that one further down on 27 was in the works before that zoning even became effective. So, kind of doesn't hold water in a lot of ways.
I'll recognize this gentleman. Could you just state your name? And
Yep, Fred Leffler, Grasshopper Lane. Did I miss it? How does the impact study take into account for commercial development, you know, because dollar additional revenue or, you know, incomes coming in and all the other amenities that could be built out there?
It depends. If you look at the towns I listed, I mean, you can
Yeah.
even just Google Massachusetts impact study, and you'll find, you know, a host of them. It really depends on what the impact of what zoning changes or projects the consultants are being asked to assess. In many cases, it's development of a specific area or parcel or set of parcels for specific uses, and they may even say, you know, what is the impact of full residential development with apartment buildings versus condos plus commercial development, or just a few residential and then lots of commercial, and they'll look at the impact across all of that. So it really depends on what thing you're asking them to assess the impact of. And in one that I didn't send you all that maybe I will send you later and that everyone should look at is the impact assessment done in Lexington. And this is after they made their zoning changes for MBTA communities 2 years ago. They look at the impact of decreasing commercial. Based on zoning changes they made, it really incentivizes the building of large apartment buildings, and they were potentially losing commercial activity or commercial space because of that.
Not mixed use.
Well, even if it was mixed use, you're losing maybe, this is a bad example, but like, let's say a grocery store, and instead they're putting an apartment building
Yeah, I
on
see
it with
what
a
you're
few boutiques, like the revenue from the grocery store probably would have had a bigger positive impact on the tax than whatever boutique shops they were putting in the bottom of the mixed-use building.
Got it.
But Acton we haven't done an impact study like, an assessment like what I'm talking about here. And there are a lot of good reasons for that. But we would love to see one, you know? It would be
Understood.
great if we had that information.
Okay, thank you.
Could you just repeat your name? I apologize.
Fred Leffler.
Brad?
Fred, F-R-E-D.
Thank you.
Yep.
I was just going to say that the Dover,
just brief. Yep.
yes, the Dover Heights people announced at the Board of Health that they are going to leverage MBTA zoning the maximum that they can. So that has started. You guys voted 8-0 to support the idea of impact studies before major zoning proposals, and this is a major zoning proposal. I believe those impact studies that you showed had a lot of commercial in that, and so I still urge you to not recommend or take no position. There's going to be thousands of additional units allowed by this zoning change. So just please keep that in mind. I know that there's a lot of people, and Alyssa's going to advertise all the good things about it, but we've not heard officially any of the downsides. All we're getting is a sales pitch of the wonderful things that could happen. The FinCom especially should look at the downsides and not by reference of other impact studies. I appreciate you looking at other impact studies, but those impact studies were not for this zoning and was not for Acton, especially where you might want to consolidate schools. I have no idea, but to presume that you're going to have fixed costs forever is, I think, a dangerous one, and I urge you guys to insist on an impact study before something of this magnitude. You know, it's basically 2/3 of the town. So, 6,000 parcels changed all in one vote. Thank you.
Recognize a select board member.
Thank you. I am the liaison from the Select Board to the Board of Health, and I was just downstairs in the Board of Health meeting that just ended, so here I am back. I have attended, since being on the board 2 years ago, every Board of Health meeting, and I have attended and listened to everything that has been presented by the Dover Heights folks who are before the Board of Health for problems with their septic. They're out of compliance with their septic because there's not enough distance to the groundwater. They have never stated that they are going to leverage the MBTA zoning to the maximum amount. That is not true.
All right. All right.
Your questions?
Just make it brief, please.
Okay. For water, we actually are pumping less and less water each year, even though the population is going up really slowly. In 2014, we pumped 1.72 million gallons a day. Last year, we pumped 1.40 million gallons a day. We're authorized to pump 1.99 million gallons a day. We've preserved more acreage with PCRCs, which is what this law is modeled after, than we have buying land to preserve. So we've gotten this land free. So in the decades that the PCRC law has been in effect, we've gotten 202 acres that we've purchased, and we've gotten 393 free from PCRC. They have the option in one of these developments to deed the land to the town or keep it. The ones that have deeded to the town have added up to 393. And then the incremental cost for each child in the school system is basically nothing, right? It is really complicated because each child is distributed among different grade levels, among different schools, right? And so you need quite a few kids before you're in the same grade before you're forced to add a grade, a section to that grade. And finally, the projections are slightly down for the school system, although they may have one extra kindergarten section next year than they expected.
I think we've got to stop. This. All right, I appreciate there's differing opinions. Let's go back to the Finance Committee. Should we delay this to the town?
We have a motion and a second on the floor.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve. So
Correct.
why don't we just vote on that unless there's any further discussion? All right, why don't we say people abstaining or saying nay go first?
You have to call them one at a time.
Oh, call them one at a time. Now I'm doing one at a time. All right. Roland.
No.
All right.
You ask everyone who says yes, everyone who says nay, and everyone who abstains. You can't just clump them together.
It's motion to approve, abstained.
All right. Motion to approve. People.
Just call a vote.
Call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained?
Abstain.
I think I'm going to abstain as well.
3 abstains? Right, thank you.
Three out of six?
Three abstains, Scott
Two
abstained.
abstained. Did you
Three.
abstain?
I abstain, yeah.
So it's
Three.
3-0-3. So 3-4, no against, 3 abstentions, so
Yeah, motion doesn't carry.
it passes because it's none against. Yes. So it's 3-0-3.
No, okay. Learn something every day.
So I can prepare statements for us to review at the next meeting. One, just to read that the Finance Committee is in favor for some of the reasons discussed. Under 30 seconds is my target, but I can also develop one that presents both sides in under 30 seconds. I timed all of the draft statements I read, all under 40 if I speak quickly, even with both sides.
A word of advice, it's a little slower when you're on the stage.
Okay. I think that was the last one that we were going to address tonight. I think that was, based on my list from Mary Ann. So,
Checkout bags.
I'm just double checking.
yeah. So we are
Oh,
pushing.
can I just ask if I missed it? The checkout bag minimum charge, Article 34?
That was a checkout bag, no, that was a Jason item, and we were going to push Jason's items to,
Oh, both Article 34 and 40? Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
All right, so we're going to change agenda then to Finance Committee business? We're good with that? Any liaison reports? Besides me? I need a second.
Second.
I attended the Health Insurance Trust meeting on April 17th, and let's see. And there, I think the big news from that is that they have decided that the cash on hand, some of the cash on hand is going to be sent back to the school and the town in the amount of, in total, $800,000, which was going to be split approximately 70-30 between the town and the school. So that would mean the school's going to get $619,600, and the town's going to get the difference. I didn't do that math. So I guess in some, 800 even is being returned. 619,600 is going to the schools. But
Mr. Chair, the split is 77-22.
Oh, I know, I was just rounding. I was just rounding, but I appreciate it. I have 77, and then I think at the meeting it was corrected to like, it was 77, like 3-4 or something like that. Yeah, I just,
76.
Yeah.
To Scott's point, the town's share is 22.55%, to Scott's point,
yeah,
so.
I wrote, yeah, it's 77.45 and 22.55. I just think round numbers. So all in, I think it's good news on the Health Insurance Trust. Is there any other liaison reports? Dr. Gang? No?
I believe our next meeting is right before town meeting?
Yes, I'm not here, so
You are not here for town meeting?
I'm not here for if there's a meeting next week, I'm not here.
No, I believe the next meeting is our meeting that happens
Oh.
immediately before town.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
Well,
Well, that's the question now. We've left some big lifting for that meeting. Normally, we would meet, is town meeting at 7?
yes.
Yes.
Normally, we would meet at 6, or if we're lucky, 6:30. Do we think we can do what needs to be done in that time?
No.
You want to try to get like 5:45 or something?
Well, we've got,
And because people have to get out of work and still get there,
No,
so.
That might be one of
We've got 3 collective bargaining articles, which will be new material. We've got, yes, this home rule petition on checkout. We got 1, 2, 3 citizens petition and 1 on Hayward in Maine. And plus we have I just wrote that Acton Memorial Library, but that's a lot.
I would say 5 o'clock. I would say 5 o'clock.
Well, the other question is, should we be trying to meet next week?
So that's,
If Jason is back,
Yeah,
I think we
that
should
might
schedule a meeting for next week, which
think
means
that
you'd
makes-
have to post an agenda by
Thursday.
by Thursday.
He won't be able to post an agenda. I would have to post
Correct.
an agenda on Thursday for a meeting next week. I think it probably would make sense to have a meeting next week than stuff all that
I would think so.
right before town meeting.
Yes, because you're going to look at a situation where we're going to potentially go to town meeting and not have a recommendation,
Yeah.
which would not look at all.
How many people can attend the meeting? If we had the same time, same place Tuesday next week, who could attend, who could not attend? I could attend.
I can attend.
I can be here.
Dave? I have a conflict.
And if I can just remind folks too, is that it's election day, so you just
Oh.
want to make sure that if you do have a meeting, you want to make sure you vote before.
I already voted, because I'm in Texas next week.
As I understand it, Greg won't be here. As I understand it, Greg won't be here next week or the week after. So,
What about Corinne?
I don't know.
Jason won't be
Oh,
back
sorry,
then.
that backs us up then. Are there any of these we think we can knock off tonight? In the email, I do not see sufficient information from Alex to understand what the basis for his. These are the home rule petition articles related to the Acton Memorial Library. I can read what he says to give you an idea of his argument, but he isn't here for us to be further informed. Does anyone feel informed enough?
Why don't you read what he says anyway?
All right. This is Alex's statement regarding Article 11. He says, assuming this is how Finance Committee votes, after meeting with residents on both sides of the issue for Article 11, we believe this petition is a fiscally responsible and forward-thinking step. Expanding the Acton Memorial Library Board of Trustees to include a citizens library trustees reflects the unified operations of the 2 libraries in practice. From a financial perspective, this integration enables shared resources, improves operational efficiency, and has the potential to lower the cost per transaction across both branches. We understand some concerns have been raised about the future of the Citizens Library. However, this article does not eliminate or diminish that library. It ensures continued representation and strengthens its role within a consolidated governance structure. This article reflects sound governance, maintains community representation, and supports a more efficient and sustainable library system for Acton. I believe we also got an email from Ms. Nichol. Am I remembering that correctly? Just give me a thumbs up. About, which I'm not seeing right here, about, here we go. Article 11 information. I'd like to read this, if that's okay. One additional financial implication of the town's plan for the trustees and the library that I just ran across in my notes while preparing a presentation on Article 11 for town meeting. The Citizens Library receives a portion of the state aid delivered to the Acton Memorial Library solely on the basis of a collaborative relationship between the 2 libraries. An eligibility requirement for state aid is certification by the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. The Citizens Library does not have this certification and would not were it to revert to an independent, volunteer-led operation. The requirements include, among others, a minimum number of hours of operation, a professional certified staff, lending of materials to other communities, and no fees associated with normal library services such as story time. And I believe if we get back to that article, this was Article 11. Article 11 is rolling the Citizens Library trustees onto the board of Memorial Library trustees, thereby becoming one large board. Citizens Library trustees will still manage the trust fund purely for the Citizens Library. I don't think there are real financial implications in terms of this is going to make things worse. It seems like it's going to make things run more smoothly. If anything, it will give Citizens Library more power over what's happening.
That's how I understood it.
Okay. Then I, in part based on what Alex said, make a motion to recommend Article 11.
Second.
Any further discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Abstains? Abstain?
One abstention.
What else do we have?
Well, there's a second part of it, but Alex was against it, so I'm assuming that that's going to have, be contested with discussion. That the articles.
Shall I read that?
Yeah,
Please.
Those articles.
Okay, this is Articles 37, 38, and 39. Citizen petitions related to Citizens Library legal expenses. Our position is not based on the underlying issues presented, but rather on the fact that these articles are fundamentally confusing, incomplete, and not fiscally actionable. All three articles propose legal expenditures but fail to specify any dollar amounts, making it impossible for a town meeting to make an informed budgetary decision. From a financial oversight perspective, the lack of specificity and clarity renders these articles problematic. While styled as appropriation articles, their stated intent appears to be limiting or restricting the town's legal expenditures on a particular issue, something these articles are not legally able to do. As confirmed by town council, even if approved, these votes would not obligate or restrict the town manager's authority over legal spending or direction. Ultimately, these articles introduce ambiguity and risk without providing a clear or effective financial directive. For these reasons, we do not recommend them.
Motion that we go to, for those, what's with the article numbers, sorry?
37, 38, and 39.
The Articles 37, 38, and 39 to not recommend.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I don't necessarily like how the statement was worded, but maybe I'll talk to Alex about that.
All right. All in favor of not approving, not recommending Articles 37, 38, 39?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain?
And then checkout bag was
That was Jason's.
Jason's.
and
Does
he's-
anyone know anything about this?
He sent me an email about it saying that he didn't feel it was the town's, the town should be mandating how businesses are run. I think,
Okay,
I read it quickly.
I have a very strong recollection of when Christine did the research for the getting rid of single-use bags. And what the research at the time said was that the most effective way to do it was to institute it costing money. Now that I say that, I'm afraid that I have it drastically backwards.
Her was to eliminate plastic bags, not
Yes.
all bags. So if you eliminate, so the argument was that we have to eliminate plastic bags because they're bad, right? And it shows that they're cheaper to produce, et cetera. So vendors liked them because they're easy. I have a ton of paper bags in my house. I try to bring bags whenever I can, but we're coming home somewhere, we need to stop in and get something for dinner, whatever, you get a bag. So what do I do with those? They end up going to the transfer station and being recycled. And paper, a lot of paper does get recycled into other uses. Where my father lives, or did, I should say, you'd go to the grocery store and they'd be like, we could charge you like 10 cents per bag. They do it down the Cape and stuff like that. I don't like that. I just think it's, you're put an undue burden. Maybe a senior citizen doesn't have the room to store excess cloth bags or whatever. Or they're stopping in from somewhere, now you're gonna charge the family more. Costs are high enough, right? I just don't like it. I just don't think who's gonna get that 10 cents? Is that 10 cents gonna go, or whatever the price is that gonna go to the town of Acton, or is that gonna go to the vendor? And that's one of the questions I have. I don't know if it even states that. And how much additional revenue is it really gonna bring in? It could end up driving businesses saying, well, I can go to Acton and put my business in a different town, and, if you make it too onerous for business, they're not gonna come here. We have plenty of open storefronts. Let's not make it any more.
I recognize Select Board Member.
So just an answer. The money would be retained by the retailer.
Thoughts that come to mind. One, this is effectively a regressive tax in that it will impact people with less money much more. Two is that it's awfully nice for the business to recoup the money of their more expensive paper bags that they have now had to implement because of the previous law. Three, I somehow have a lot more paper bags now. And I don't just mean, I get double bagged every time I go, and it hasn't, I feel like it's a lot more than when I had the plastic bags, which I could also reuse, but paper is much more recyclable, which the plastic bags were not at all. You're saying paper can be recycled and actually reused.
So, we're the Acton Finance Committee advising the town. We're not the Retail Advisory Committee. We're not a finance committee for our local retailer or for our town. So, I have a motion to not recommend this article.
My inclination, and I know we're debating this, is that it's actually a better move for us to have no recommendation because there is not a clear financial impact for the town unless you really want to argue that stores are not going to come here because they have to figure out whether having to charge money for bags. Towns all over the state do it, so it's clearly not overly complicated. So my part of this debate would be to say that we should instead have no recommendation.
All right, well, we have a motion and a second, which is to not recommend. So why don't we take a vote on that, and then if it's not clear, then we will entertain Christie's suggestion. Does that make sense? All right. So all in favor of not recommending the motion, not recommending the article on the bag fee, Article 34? Article 34. All in favor of not accepting Article 34? Not recommending?
Aye.
Aye.
Is that four?
That's 5-1.
Did Dave vote?
Dave voted, he didn't abstain, he took his T-shirt off.
By the way, I think the number of grocery stores in town has increased by 50% over the last 12 months, so.
Well, one was just a relocation to a bigger store and not a net new ad.
The other ones so we covered.
Yeah, can we ask Mary Ann what we still have?
I think it's Article 6. I think Article,
Sorry, okay. So I believe that Article 3 you still want to defer because that's budget transfer, and
Yeah.
you'll make that decision that night. Okay. Article 6 we already spoke about, which is borrowing for town capital equipment and projects. That was continued to be deferred. Article 11, you just voted on that. Approve home rule petition related to Acton Memorial Library. Article 14, 15, and 16, those will continue to be deferred. That's collective bargaining agreements with fire, patrol, and superiors. Further information for the evening of town meeting. Article 18 was the commuter lot and station maintenance. I have to go back to my notes. What was that decision?
yeah, I think Dave, I think we voted on that one.
Article 18.
18.
Yes. Affirmative.
Yeah, we voted in favor of the 18.
Okay.
Since I approve.
And then we jump to
31.
Article 31, yep, correct. The open space residential development, and you voted on that after Ms. Jones summarized that. And then we just spoke about Article 34, the checkout bag, which you voted on. And you also voted on Articles 37, 38, and 39, which all pertain to the citizens' petitions for the citizens' library expenses. And then the one that you may want to discuss, deciding what you want to do, is still the Article 40, the citizens' petition to hold a workshop regarding the traffic light at Hayward and Main Street. If you could keep that as deferred for May 5th, but that's the one that you haven't revisited yet.
I think my memory on that was that there was no financial implication other than just, it was asking that a workshop would be held to have a discussion. That was my memory of it. Go ahead, Chrissy.
It is not marked on here. Is this, I'm hoping one of our select board members can confirm, is this a non-binding citizens petition? Given that it's non-binding, I'm extremely comfortable not having a recommendation.
It is non-binding.
Thank you.
Okay, so, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
I move we have no recommendation.
second,
We got a second.
second. All right,
Who seconded? Not to recommend or no recommendation?
no recommendation,
Yep, thank you.
since it's non-binding. Okay. So, all in favor of that? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Other? All right.
Passed unanimously.
No, I just want to make sure. I believe we should meet at 6 o'clock, because we still have to go through
Yeah, we still got
Yeah.
some ground to cover,
I
but it
was-
can
some
be
stuff,
covered.
but
yeah.
but
can
we
be
can do
covered.
it if we start at 6 as opposed to needing to start earlier.
So the next Finance Committee meeting will be on
May 4th? Or is it the 3rd?
May 5th.
May 5th.
May
I
5th
know, it's my anniversary.
at 6 PM. And the, what was it, the French or
A room to be,
room to be determined at the high school that
We-
will have tiny desks that we
We
won't
did
fit in.
book the same room as you had last year for FinCom, which is the room right next to where the auditorium is.
All right. Now, can I? I've been trying to go to you for like 5 hours.
Move to adjourn.
Can you please make a motion, sir?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.